Picture this. It is 1930s, Great Depression, New York City. You are the mayor of New York City, Fiorello LaGuardia. You got to figure out what can you do to make the people in your city feel better and improve the economic situation of the city. What you're going to do is you're going to task Robert Moses, who's in charge of the city planning. What you're going to do is have him bring some energy to the city. This energy comes with corporations and countries having a World's Fair. This superiority contest was the 1939 New York City World's Fair. Instead of looking to the economic tragedies of the past and present, what this fair does is encourage people to look toward a prosperous future where the problems of society have been resolved through human ingenuity. Corporate participants included big names like AT&T, Ford, Westinghouse, General Electric, and IBM. Participating countries included Britain, France, Netherlands, Poland, Japan, USSR, a few others, and of course, the USA. What I am interested in is one economic and cultural outlier, the Soviet Union. How did this country, with its unique history and economic system, set itself apart from the others at this fair? How did it use architecture and propaganda to try to persuade the people that the world of tomorrow would be achieved by socialism, not capitalism? Stick around if you want to hear more. My name is Angelo, and this is Architecture with Angelo. I'd like to do a quick refresher. Capitalism is the voluntary exchange of goods and services, people making money through profit. USA was, and still is, capitalist. Socialism and communism, on the other hand, involve the state owning all industries and means of production. Private property is abolished and is thought of as the source of evil. There is no profit motive. Instead, the mantra is from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. The USSR is communist. So inevitably, these two powers coming together at this World Fair, there's going to be some clash in ideologies. There's going to be some competition. And the Soviet Union's kind of got a chip on its shoulder because it's looking at all these supposed successes of capitalism and says, okay, how can we do something different? How can we woo people to our side? And they do this through the use of architecture and propaganda. So what the Soviet Union wanted to do was control the narrative about their story and the story of communism at large. They wanted to expose as many people as possible. They wanted to take advantage of the economic insecurity of the 1930s. With a lot of people facing unemployment and economic insecurity, they figured, this is easy pickings for potential socialists and communist adherents. They wanted to communicate all of these great accomplishments of the USSR under the great, wise Joseph Stalin, boasting the success of their social programs, the sophistication of their culture, and the remarkable technological achievements they have. They wanted to create the illusion of a worker's paradise. Chief architect for this was Boris Iofan. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I'm going to keep soldiering on. Boris, we'll just call him Boris. Boris was Stalin's favorite architect. He trained under the neoclassical tradition, which Stalin liked. He was a little more traditional than Lenin. Lenin was very modernist, but Stalin preferred the traditional styles. What he liked to do was use tradition for stability, order, and authoritarianism. Previously, in 1937, Paris had its World's Fair. Their pavilion was met with mixed reviews. People grew bored with all the boring charts and graphs and exhibits. Too many words. They wanted action. They wanted power. They wanted movement. So the Soviets said, okay, we're learning from that. What we're going to do is we're just going to keep things simple. How can we move the Americans to, at the very least, be sympathetic to our story and our nation? Their Soviet Pavilion had two levels. So the lower level had exhibits about transportation and urban planning, and they even had a replica of the Moscow subway. The upper level had an amphitheater, art, and exhibits about Soviet culture. Sweeping murals, monumental statues, and a looming exterior facade was meant to impress and inspire curiosity among the masses. The exterior of the building had busts of Lenin and Stalin. They had quotes from them on each side. At the center, there was a super tall pylon, and it had a glorified statue of a worker, and he was dubbed as Joe the Worker. It was this idea of the Soviet Union offering itself as this beacon of hope and almost this source of salvation for the disillusioned workers of the 1930s in the United States, and in New York especially. The amphitheater and colonnade and their design recall buildings like St. Peter's Basilica, the Colosseum, and the Pantheon. Inside the pavilion, murals and exhibitions depicted all the supposed successes of the Soviet Union. The entrance hall featured marble and stones from the Ural Mountains. There was a grand mural that depicted Soviets from all walks of life, appearing happy and joyous that they were able to work without the evil capitalists telling them what to do, and instead have a government telling them what to do. So, yay, everybody wins. And flanking this mural were two statues of Lenin and Stalin. So you get that culty vibe also. It's almost like, okay, we're communists, so we don't have a religion, so our religion is just going to become the state. We're just going to have this unwavering devotion to the state and its leaders. Inside the pavilion, there were two particular things that really resonated with Americans. There was a scale model of the Palace of the Soviets. It showcases the sophistication and grandeur that the Soviets had and aspired to, and it showcased the supposed wealth of the USSR. To be able to create something like this, you can't be poor, and if it were complete, it would have been the tallest building in the world. Again, we see how it's more traditional in how it looks. It's not glass and steel and all that. Another very memorable and immersive exhibit was a full-scale replica of the newly completed Mayakovskaya station. Socialism created this. That's what the Soviets are communicating through this pavilion. Socialism created this, the brilliance of Lenin and Stalin. What they did was unlock the intellectual potential of Soviets by freeing them from the shackles of capitalism. The other pavilions at the fair boasted about a future where technology solved their problems. But for the Soviets, that paradise was already here. So this exhibition was very ambitious in a sea of capitalism, planting its flag as the lone representative of socialism. You got lots of positive feedback from attendees in mainstream publications. Fiorello LaGuardia even compared the American Revolution to the Bolshevik Revolution, which was the revolution that overthrew the capitalists and the Tsar of Russia and installed the communist government. There were random people that were interviewed, and they said that they were more sympathetic to the Soviets, and they said that, you know, if this is what communism looks like, with all these workers' paradises and everyone all happy and hunky-dory in these murals, then sign me up. Even mainstream publications liked it. New York Times, Time Magazine, they really liked the Metro station especially. And how it conveyed the architectural grandeur of the Soviet Union. Some critics did dismiss the architecture as too ostentatious, too dumbed down for the masses. But Soviets hear that, then they're just going to say, well, you, Mr. Art Critic, are too bourgeois for this. This is for the masses. So you are wrong. Devout capitalists, religious people did not like it, and they condemned LaGuardia. And it's interesting because this criticism foreshadows what would happen eventually. At first, there was the Non-Aggression Pact, which was basically having Germany and Russia say, okay, we're not going to fight during World War II. Now, obviously, that didn't go well. And then after World War II, there was the Cold War between the capitalist USA and the communist USSR. The fact that officials and publications spoke so favorably of the Soviet Union seems unthinkable with the Cold War in mind. Instead of people thinking of the Soviet Union as more of a curiosity and interesting alternative to capitalism, they thought of them as the very enemies of everything they thought was important and what they held dearly, their values. It's also an interesting window into an alternate universe where Soviet-US relations were not as sour. What if America and the USSR became allies? Would it mean that perhaps America would become more of a social democracy if people were lukewarm to some of the more mild socialist reforms that took place in the USSR? Or the Soviet Union would have liberalized earlier. Who knows? It's a fun little thought experiment, a fun little portal into alternate history. I will leave you with that, and as always, thank you for watching. And my name is Angelo, and this is Architecture with Angelo.